Chile here with Sirius Talis Moon, and the moon is opposing Uranus, 1 degree away from Black Moon Lilith. I stopped at the previous video, it's Jupiter hour now, when I predicted something like a 9/11 that could be involving a plane that have travelers, okay? Because Jupiter is a plane and Moon is people. So this would be a commercial flight, in this, not because of commercial, but because it would be the people. I talked about around January 6th.
Be who you want to be.
And another thing that is coming up is that certain people are listeners and they basically expose themselves. And what do I mean by that? Maybe it's a title of their job to, let's say, listen to civilian conversations or to broadcasts, and they are personally involved. So they are exposing themselves in their types of behaviors, because what it yields is that trajectories around that I'm just checking to see if I got this one, because even to me it's surprising, but I know that when I have particularly the prediction where I say no, it cannot be, then later I'm finding out that was the case. So this could very well be one of those predictions. Now, to me, that is strange, because Saturn meeting Neptune anyway on the world degree on Valentine's Day. But another thing that comes to mind right now is that there is a certain trajectory, and this is one of the things that are evolving, whether regarding that ritual abuse, Me Too like type of atmosphere. And this is that certain people have either the position of watchers or listeners, and here's the thing, it could be combination that this is their job and that they are obsessed with a particular civilian. Or fellow civilian. Now what is happening is that this type of atmospheres can be a situation where if they cross the threshold of venting and try to outright smear campaign and prevent access to resources, okay, because they saw themselves becoming the offender and they began to behave kind of like the person that they would laugh at a decade ago. Okay, and I don't mean a victim that becomes the offender, I mean somebody that would see that somebody is a victim and then a decade later they are the offender themselves towards the same victim. Again, anything that violates a sexual sovereignty doesn't hold water. It doesn't sustain. It plays into hands of extortion cults. And also with the people that present something that violates sexual sovereignty, they're not trusted, because they're part of a treason cult. And again, it can be even the case that the people that stood up for sexual sovereignty for several years now are beginning to show up as the reliable and consistent throughout all that they went through. And I'm saying, okay, maybe yes, maybe no. It's not about, but definitely those that weren't are seen for their inconsistency, kind of like Hag not notifying Israel about the measure that will be taken against Israel, and everybody knows either if Israel exposes Hag, it exposes Israel, and of course if it exposes Hag, then all hell breaks loose and exposes the entire global network, including Singapore, because they want to move a Hag to Singapore. Okay, not talking about the government so much as the billionaires that move to Singapore thinking that they can evade something. Genau gesagt. So what I'm saying is that there are certain people that went a certain trajectory, and now when they are either watchers or listeners or just obsessed, I don't know, all of the above. Now, obsession usually is because there's an underlying change that needs to be, and here Pluto in Saturn sign is about structure. What was the structure that was up until now? Somehow the rapist was always the underdog. Okay, I'm not saying Capricorn is patriarchy, but down with that. Underdog. Up until now, always the rapist is the underdog. Enough with that. They're the fucking dictator that was funded by the same oil company. That underdogginess and how do they call it? Underground and so on and so forth. Nothing. Big crisis. It is indeed a big crisis. Now, but the people that weren't used to that trajectory, what's happening with them is that because they are so obsessively watching the civilians, and because they're so obsessively trying to control the civilians, then they are being more and more and more triggered of the deepest, darkest wounds that those civilians, they don't know that they're being watched. They don't know that they're being watched by these people. These people begin to expose themselves as a part of the war crimes. And then what happens is that those people that undermine themselves by going with those extortion cults, okay, by being a part of the offenders in those extortion cults, they won't be able to blame shift anymore. And all of the wounds are triggered because they push the people that said no to trafficking and no to rape, they push them to a corner where they have to say names, where they have to take extreme action. Because enough with thinking that you can control of the citizens, of the people, of the women, of the women, of the women, of the women that said no to rape. Without that having extreme implications. Now imagine situation. A person tries to use control tactics on a survivor, doing it in a hidden way. That survivor, of course, is pushed to corner. What do? Whatever they will do, it would step on the deepest, darkest wounds of the offender. It's not on purpose. It's because you don't do that to a person to attack an innocent person. To think those people, they can get away with that. Oh, maybe so can I. And in that way, I'll have real estate. In that way, I'll have this. In that way, you'll be a war criminal. They'll be hanged. Because you are a sex offender. And here is the thing. What does not honor sexual sovereignty cannot be solution. What happened when the country. Yes, what happens when the police, okay, is supposed to safeguard a person from being politically assassinated? And they kidnap him and say, this is for your security. Then the policies should have not kept women from escaping violence, because it's the same methods how the assassination happens. Also, with Mars and Saturn, Saturn has duration, Saturn also has implication. You know, one should be very cautious if they're offended, they take steps against the victim. They should be extremely cautious. What measures they take? What is the time that they take these measures? For how long they kept that victim in helpless state? What resources they took from the victim? And mind you, all of this was visible in energy. And how much chances they had to just leave that victim alone, not to prevent them access to resources, to something that is actually providing for them, to a well-balanced nervous system, to soil that is actually nourished, to air that is clear, to house that is housing that is safe and free. They should be extremely cautious because it's Saturn. How isolated they kept the victim, and for how long? because they know that comes Pluto to that Saturn, and as always, Saturn is still in Jupiter's sign. There's still time. There's still time to make another choice. There's still time to not be violent, to stop the violence against the victims. Everybody knows what is ritual abuse today. Everybody knows what is mind control. Everybody knows what is something like a MK often or witchcraft or whatnot. If they have at least one bit of sense in them, now is the time that they can say that they've been in that cult, how they got there, what happened, what they did. What the implication, and ask for help as survivor, while indeed stopping to do violence against women